Ladies and gentlemen, from the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice, Deacon Gerald Celente.
Hello, this is Deacon Celente of the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace, and Justice. Freedom and peace and justice, those aren't words that allow to be spoken in the mainstream media or among the politicians in a country near you, which they call democracies. Freedom of speech has been robbed from us with censorship that they call disinformation if you don't say what they want to say. Peace, no one is permitted on the mainstream media speaking of peace. It's prohibited. Freedom and democracy, that they kill people all over the world saying they're bringing to those other nations when we don't have them in the nations of the West. Justice, no. Slap on the wrist for the big criminals, the bankers that steal billions. They're too big to fail. Convicted of felonies, slap on the wrist, get a fine. But prosecution to the fullest of we the little people. On Sunday, February 19th, I will be in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial, along with a number of other speakers, including Ron Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, Scott Ritter, many others. It's a huge rally that's going to be taking place. It's called Rage Against the War Machine. Rage Against the War Machine. And the website is rageagainstwar.com. Rageagainstwar.com. So, a friend of mine heard me speaking about this, and he wrote to me and he said, Gerald, I hope you get a lot of supporters for your speech in D.C. Great cause, but hard to get people to listen. And that's what I keep hearing over and over again. Well, you know, the people aren't listening. Oh, the people don't know what's going on. Okay. Granted, people aren't listening. They have no idea. And by the way, if you want to see how low America's sunk, just tune into the Grammys last week. How about the satanic guy doing his ritual? How about all the crazy people there out of their minds? You think about it, from Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, all the great rock and rollers, the Motowns, Dionne Warwicks. And now it's one bad rap. It signifies perfectly what America has declined into. From a land of opportunity to a disgrace. So, why would I bother trying to get those people to listen? They're not going to listen no matter what. But that's people's excuses. So, I wrote back and I said, you have inspired me to ask all those I know and all those who, quote, listen to whether it's my podcasts or the Trends Journal or Dr. Ron Paul or one after another, or Jimmy Dore will also be at the rally. How about all those people that do listen? What are you, those of you who do listen and do know what is going on, what are you doing to stop the war machine from stealing our money, killing people around the world, and soon to kill us as the Ukraine war continues to escalate? So I'm tired of people saying, oh, the people don't know what's going on. Oh, they're dumb. What are you doing? What are you personally doing? What action are you taking to change the direction of this? I'm doing everything I can do. And a number of people are. But what are you doing? What are the people that you know that do listen? What are they doing? How much money are they contributing? How are they going out into the streets and joining causes like the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace, and Justice? Like joining Occupy Peace? Like going to the Rage Against the War Machine rally on Sunday, February 19th? Will you be there? Will you donate? Will you do anything to stop this? It's one after another now. Oh, the UN Secretary General said we're getting closer to World War III. Oh, Donald Trump said we're getting, no kidding. Oh, but they say it now. Oh, you better listen because they're saying it. We only said this February 22nd, 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine. It was the cover of the Trends Journal. From COVID war to Ukraine war to World War. And they just keep ramping it up. More and more and more tanks being given. As the people, the homeless, are filling up the streets. I just went outside before. There was a guy sitting in front of my door. How did I get him to leave? I couldn't open the door. And over half of America's budget that was just approved by Congress for $1.7 trillion, over half went to the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex that the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, a man who was in Iraq that murdered people, is now our Secretary of Defense. The founding fathers must be rolling in their grave. He was also, before he got this job, sitting on the board of directors of Raytheon, the second largest defense contractor in America. And boy, they're doing great with all these weapons going overseas to Ukraine to keep bloodying the killing fields, a war that would have ended a long time ago. And again, as I said, I am totally opposed to the war, totally opposed to it. And I totally understand why it happened. But they don't talk about that. And now Vladimir Putin said at the remembrance of the Battle of Stalingrad, when Hitler and the Nazis attacked Russia and killed over 20 million of them, and over 1 million in Stalingrad, Putin said, Germany's sending tanks. We're at war with them again. They invaded our country, and now we're back at war with them. This isn't ancient history. World War II ended in 1945, a year before I was born. Germany was destroyed. Berlin, one after another. Most of Europe destroyed. And now it's going to be nuclear annihilation. So what are you doing? I'm tired of saying, oh, people aren't listening. They had for the third week in a row, some 2 million people in France have been taking to the streets in protest of spending more money for their military-industrial complex, sending more weapons, while they're increasing the retirement age. 2 million people out of 67 million. America, 332 million people. Try to get 2 million people out to the street to protest. I guess they're too busy eating junk food. Try getting 2 million Americans out to protest. Where are the peace protests? Washington, D.C., February 19th. Starts at 2:30 p.m. Get all the information by going to rageagainstwar.com. As I said, I understand why Russia invaded. Because of a number of reasons. One, the United States overthrow the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych, the coup under the Obama administration, brought to you by Victoria Nuland, Under Secretary of Defense, and is handing out candies along with John McCain and Jeffrey Pyatt, the United States ambassador to Ukraine during the revolution, Maidan Square. Can you imagine if the Russians come to the rally on February 19th and they have their top people handing out cookies and candy and supporting the rally? Oh my God, that would be terrible. But it's okay for America to do it as they're overthrowing your country. Number two was that Russia had made a deal when it was the Soviet Union broke up with the United States that NATO would not move 1 inch further. There were 16 NATO countries. Now there are 30. And not only are they 1 inch further, they're right on the Russian border. And number three, violation of the Minsk Agreement that was put together by France and Germany during the uprising. Because the people in the Donbass region that are all Ukrainians, but they're Russians, they didn't vote for this new government that overthrew the government. So they were going to be a separatist region, part of Ukraine, but not ruled by them. But the Minsk Agreement, as admitted by Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, who was responsible for putting this together, along with Hollande, the French president, they both admitted that it was basically a scam. And just to give Ukraine more time to build up their military to defeat the Russians and get them out of Donbass, of which the Ukrainians killed some 15,000, but that's not reported. The Ukraine president claimed he personally refused to implement a deal for peace in Donbass. February 9th, Ukrainian President Vladimir Putin personally refused to implement the 2015 Minsk agreements. He made the admission during an interview with Der Spiegel, published on Thursday. Zelensky said he viewed the agreements, quote, as a concession on Ukraine's part and never once actually sought to implement them. This is not reported in the Western media. Quote, but as for Minsk as a whole, I told Emmanuel Macron, that's the current president of France, and Angela Merkel, who was the former chancellor of Germany, quote, we cannot implement it like this. They never intended to live by the deal. And now Seymour Hersh, a man with a great track record of showing America's murderous wars in Vietnam and Iraq, came out with a major study and findings that the United States was behind the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline owned by Russia. Yep. But the White House says, quote, blog on Nord Stream explosion, utterly false. And they discredit Seymour Hersh because he said, no, when there was that chemical warfare in Syria, it wasn't brought about by Damascus. It was brought about by the separatists the militants that were fighting the Damascus government. We wrote about that in the Trends Journal as it was happening. It was 100% correct. All the facts are there in detail. But they're demeaning him. And Russia is saying the United States, quote, has unleashed a total hybrid war. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that Washington wants, quote, a strategic defeat of Russia and its goal and ramped up tensions in aspects to bilateral relations. There can be no business as usual. So the war is heating up. And they're saying it is. UK considers sending Kyiv jet fighters. Isn't that nice? Oh, the UK, where they have a 10.5 inflation rate. People are starving. And they're building up the war machine to keep the war going. And then Japan and the Philippines agree to boost military ties. Isn't that nice? Against China. And the United States is opening 4 bases in the Philippines, 4 more bases. And one of the top trends for 2023 is Middle East meltdown. The headline this past Friday was, quote, deadly attack near Jerusalem is terrorism, Netanyahu. 2 people, including a 6-year-old boy, were killed and several others injured when a car plowed into a group standing at a bus stop outside Jerusalem on Friday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has condemned the incident as a terrorist attack. That's the big news. But 3 days earlier, Israeli forces killed 5 Palestinians in Jericho raid. That doesn't make the news. And what are they doing in Jericho? They're illegally in occupied territory. Isn't that a nice name? Occupied territory? And they call the people that occupy it settlers? How about thieves and murderers? Again, don't anyone dare call me an anti-Semite. I just went on about the United States' murderous actions. And as the United States, of which 64% of the people living paycheck to paycheck, we send nearly $4 billion a year to Israel so they get the armaments to keep killing the people in their illegally occupied territory. So that's where we're at. If there is a military conflict between Israel and Iran, and Israel, the United States versus Iran, it's the beginning of the end. And by the way, you'll see oil prices go way above $130 a barrel. Over in Europe, because of the sanctions that they put on Russia and they're not buying the oil, energy prices, the big news was they decreased last month. They only increased 17.5%, down from the 25% increase the month before. The people are having a very difficult time. But as I say, when all else fails, they take you to war. And they've taken us to war. World War III has begun. And now they're even starting to admit it. So please do what you can to come to the rally on Sunday, February 19th, at the Lincoln Memorial, beginning at 12:30. And again, for more information, all you have to do is go to Rage Against War, rageagainstwar.com. And again, it's not important that the other people won't listen. It's important that the people that are listening, that do know what's going on, do something. Do anything you can in the name of the God that you believe in. Amen and amen. See you in D.C. on February 19th at 12:30 p.m. Thank you.